A new Bitcoin setup is likely emerging, or potentially emerging, I would say, with CPI prints coming out a little bit later today, which is very likely going to move the markets, being that sort of catalyst, the excuse for markets to move, as markets are kind of at a pivotal point. So I want to be coming at this video from the top-down view of what to kind of expect during September, and then what if met would indicate that Bitcoin is actually going to pull off the unthinkable here and have a bit of a reversal. But as of right now, and as we have been saying, this week is, at least for Monday, was likely to see a little bit of an upside move. Tuesday, perhaps a little bit, maybe another test at upside, but likely sideways. And then Wednesday, if there is going to be any sort of, counter move, in this case to the downside, it would likely start today. So that is going to be a bit of the focus here. And first things first, let's actually just go through some daily statistics for Wednesday. Of course, Wednesday has actually been more weighted towards negative closures. In fact, since 2024 began, almost or over 58.25% of all Wednesdays have closed negatively from open to closure. But in the event that we have seen positive closing Wednesdays, it actually has had the highest positive return at almost 3.5% versus the negative side, which was losing an average of about 2% almost, or a little bit under 2%. Now, I do want to point out that these ranges, which we're about to calculate for Wednesday as well, have worked out yet again for yesterday, Tuesday, and the day prior to that, and actually basically the whole last 10 days. But to the upside, 3.5% to the upside would put Bitcoin somewhere around about 59,500 to maybe even $60,000. That would be very significant if it did happen today, as we'll go over a little bit later, meaning that, that would be a damn good indication that Bitcoin is going to indeed dig in and trade its way sideways and out to the upside over time here in September. But if Bitcoin were to play out the negative of that, we can see that 2% from 2 days open to the downside would actually put Bitcoin pretty much exactly where it's at right now. So, if Bitcoin does close lower than that today, probably a good indication that we will see continuation to the downside on Thursday, another retest of these lows here at $54,000. On that topic, I do want to call out that there is 12-hour over here on CME hidden bearish divergence potential. It is not in there just yet, but we can see that the 12-hour RSI is making higher highs than the highs that we did see in early September when Bitcoin was trading closer to $60,000. So, if Bitcoin on the 12-hour time frame, which closes in about 2.5 hours for CME, closes below 56,675, which it's about $100 away from right now. That will confirm some hidden bearish divergence, and next move very likely would be to the downside, coming back down somewhere closer to $55,000. Tight ranges here, but perhaps interesting for some out there. Same thing over here on the daily for spot price action. But moving on from there, I do want to kind of put this whole analysis into one just super simple metric, I guess, which is the 5-day red 5 exponential moving average right here. Again, it's not going to be perfect all the time, but gets you in the right direction most of the time. And look, if Bitcoin could close above that today, which is 57,150, that would be a damn good indication that Bitcoin actually will, keep the hopium alive here and present a bit of a bounce. In fact, it would actually fire off another one of these setups over here, which over the full history of Bitcoin has actually had a less than 50% strike rate, actually closer to 39%. But because the returns for this strategy, just literally using that 5 exponential, have been massively in favor of a very high profit factor. Well, the equity curve right here is, I think, kind of speaks for itself. So obviously that would only happen if Bitcoin does close above the 5 exponential today. If that does, again, keeps the hopium alive for Bitcoin laws, for Bitcoin, again, trading sideways into the upside outside of, through this range, basically. Again, I want to remind myself, this is probably unlikely right now, or at least it's better to be defensive, as we have gone over for Bitcoin September lows. Generally, the lows in September were usually had, around or a little bit before the midway point of September. So until we get to about September 15th, it's going to be better to err on the side of not having seen the low than having seen the low. I have seen a few people call out this, as well as, I've called out this about a week, or maybe not a week ago, but a few days ago, in halving years or in election years, 2012, 2016, 2020, the low of September has actually come in very early within the month. This is only 3 data points, so it's not super convincing, but twice it came in on the 2nd day of September, and once it came in on the 8th day of September. So did think that was somewhat interesting. I'll be presenting a different statistic on that, just the highs of September, probably in the next video. But what's interesting about that is actually the highs of September were had very early on in the month. So, we probably don't see Bitcoin trade above the high of like that first week of September, which is, I believe, around $59,000 before the end of the month, or sorry, until October begins, if that's even going to happen at all. Anyways, moving on from there and just kind of wrapping up my thoughts on this one. Again, still better to be on the defensive side for at least another few days until we get to that 15th day of September and until Bitcoin reclaims some of these critical areas that we just spoke about on the 5-day. Also, on top of that, speaking of the 5-day, which is closing tonight, we are going to potentially see momentum continue to the downside if Bitcoin does close today below 59,150. So again, things are still kind of turning against the Bitcoin boo laws here. The 2-day time frame is going to continue down as well. $59,000 is that same pivot. Actually, just closed last night, by the way. And the daily has been more or less spinning its wheels, showing upside momentum and getting a bit of a bounce. To be fair, but this is going to be a bearish reset the longer that Bitcoin just fails to reclaim some of those critical regions, as you can see right there. And obviously the weekly is still obviously going to be to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below about 57, which right now is slightly below. So again, I think best case here for the boo laws is you do something like this. You kind of dig your way into that 55, maybe test it a few more times. Don't necessarily close anywhere below, and then just kind of, use up all the momentum to the downside. And after that, you get a little bit of, at least an upside bounce play, and perhaps things can kind of grind their way out from there. Possible, sure. But again, that is the less likely thing to be happening as of right now, until the conditions that we spoke about earlier are met. Moving on from there, I do want to get into some HPDR ranges. In fact, actually the 5-day HPDR is very accurately summarizing kind of what I'm saying here. Look, the high this week, perfect test to the median right there, just above $58,000. So far, it has been a bit of a rejection. And again, closing tonight. Of course, this will update tomorrow. So we'll see, where that median comes in around. And maybe if the 5-day opens above it, maybe sort of kind of, it will, again, that could be a little bit more of a hopium signal right there. But again, I want to be very deliberately clear with my thoughts here, that, right now is a better time to be defensive than not. Even if you miss the ultimate low, the generational low, which is just fucking retarded. Sorry. I mean, lobotomized. Don't mean retarded. I mean retarded in the scientific sense, where it means like, well, you know what I mean, okay? Get a fucking dictionary.com in your life. But where the hell was I going with that? I forget what sort of train of thought I was on. But again, this very accurately is kind of summarizing the current range. High, 58,100. Low, about 51.5 to 52,000. And yes, that's the point that I was on. If Bitcoin is going to, salvage itself, we kind of expect that median to come so far down into this next 5-day open that Bitcoin probably opens above it. Again, it's going to be a very long 16 hours, 60 minutes left to go. But if you see something like that, could be another good indication here. But, if I'm just shooting it straight, which is what I want to be doing, well, I'd be looking at this and I'd say, hey, probably a little bit of a short-term downside test today, and we'll see how things hold up, from there. So that's what I'd be looking at for, as of right now. Yes, there are still more downside signals and upside signals as far as this goes. But a good first step to kind of flipping things around would, again, be reclaiming that 5 exponential on the 5-day time frame, which is like the lowest common denominator for switching things up. As far as what I'm looking at right now. I did want to call out one thing. It is still, this video is not like, it's not super long just yet. But I did want to call out one thing. I was looking at gold earlier. Gold is acting really good. It's acting really well. It would be kind of uncharacteristic not to see Bitcoin follow in gold's footsteps overall, but this is a completely different chart, especially for the last 4, 5, 6 months now. It almost inverted in a sense, if you look at it like this. So, does that bode well for Bitcoin? I mean, probably not at this point. So I'll get off on that topic. I'm looking for some hopium for the... Elsa is screaming in the background. Anyways, I'll sign off on that note. As always, want to wish you the best. Again, big catalyst later today. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can't tell you what sort of interpretations of it are going to be in what, because no one does. But it is going to be a good excuse to move the markets, and that's where we likely do see, either Bitcoin reclaim one of those critical regions or continue on with the same shit that we've been looking at. So with that said, I'd like to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.